Hello again, everyone. Please subscribe to the channel and leave a like if you enjoy the video, since we got a strike on some of our works. Thank you so much and enjoy the video. The story begins in a place far from the city, where an older man was calling out to a boy named Shui. This man was the boy's father and wanted to know what he was doing. Shui seemed confused and didn't quite understand the situation. In the end, his father just wanted his son's help to pull in the fishing net and see what they could catch that day. Afterward, he planned to teach the boy something. The two started fishing together. They had more struggles than success, but still spent some quality time together. During the fishing, Shui spotted a red carp and decided he wanted to catch it. He didn't want to let the fish get away. However, the creature suddenly disappeared, and something strange happened. The boy's body froze completely underwater, and he couldn't move anymore. All he wanted at that moment was his father's help. Weakened, he ended up fainting. When night fell, his father was nowhere to be found. Instead, two unfamiliar people appeared, frightening the boy. An old man began to mock him. The man's name was Lai Tu Zhang, and the young man with him was also named Zhang. The protagonist's arms were tied, and he had no idea what was happening, which made everything even more confusing. The old man was amused by the situation. They had tricked the boy. They made him think he was only going to guide them, but in truth, they were using him as bait to lure a water monster. The boy slept deeply, like a rock. When he woke up, he realized that it had all been a dream. It had been a month since the real Shui had starved to death at home. A new being, reincarnated in his body, had taken his place. Shui's mother had died in childbirth, and he was raised only by his father. 3 months earlier, the old man had fallen ill and passed away too. The sense of attachment that the new soul in the body felt was something he had never experienced before. Even after living there for a month, the reincarnated boy didn't fully understand the people around him. He discovered too late that he had been deceived by Lai Tu Zhang and used as bait for a monster. During this time, he also realized that this world was different. Humans could train and reach incredible power. Those who walked that path were called cultivators. But humans weren't the only ones who could evolve. Monsters could also train and grow stronger. These creatures were known as water beasts, and one of them was approaching their location. The young man named Zhang thought the monster was only half a meter long, but he was completely wrong. The creature was enormous and rushed toward them. Zhang tried to react and punch the beast, which had a gigantic mouth. The creature destroyed the boat with a single bite. Lai Tu panicked. He didn't want to die there. Seeing the protagonist as a chance to escape, he made a cruel decision. He stabbed the boy's hand and threw him into the water. After sinking to the bottom of the river, the boy realized he couldn't free himself. Suddenly, he felt as if he was seeing the father of the body's former owner trying to save him. He thought that, if it were true, it would be too good to be real. In the blink of an eye, he found himself back on his father's boat, but quickly fell into the water again. The water monster was now beside him, and it seemed impossible to escape. He truly believed that this was the end, that he would lose his life there, drowning in the depths. Before the creature could strike, a system panel suddenly appeared before him. At that moment, he received a special ability called Water Control. The essence available for immediate use was that of the water monkey, and the protagonist's body underwent a complete recovery process. When he opened his eyes, he realized he was still alive. At first, he thought he was drowning, but soon understood that wasn't the case. It felt as if he were walking on solid ground within the water, and all sense of resistance had vanished. The panel explained that he now had control over water, able to manipulate its flow freely using his energy. He discovered that he could breathe underwater and that his wounds were fully healed. However, that didn't mean he was safe. The water monster tried to attack again, opening its enormous mouth, which terrified him. But the creature ended up being bound by chains made of water itself. The boy began to doubt what he was seeing. It all seemed impossible, like one of those novel systems he used to read about. Underwater, he no longer had any limitations. He could control everything around him, but realized that his abilities had cooldowns and that nothing would be easy. The monster broke free from the chains and tried to bite him again, but the boy managed to dodge. He knew he had to find a way to survive. Then he remembered another skill he had received, Blood Seal of Dominion. This technique allowed him to use his own blood to draw ancient runes and form a contract with aquatic beasts. At that moment, he decided that his only chance to survive was to try to subdue the water monster. He restrained the creature again to begin the process. With his hands, he drew the necessary runes and activated the blood seal. However, before the technique could be completed, he had to endure a mental battle of willpower against the monster. He knew he couldn't lose. With determination and effort, he succeeded and achieved full control over the creature. When he emerged from the water, he felt immense relief for still being alive. Now he could issue mental commands to the water beast and summon it whenever he needed. Fortunately, in the memories he had absorbed from the body's previous owner, he found a map of the area. He discovered that his home was relatively close, so he decided to return to eat something and rest. The next day, Lai Tu appeared again, leading the way for a man named Steward Zheng, and the two were heading straight to Ah Shui's house. A young man watching from afar thought that group was about to cause trouble. Lai Tu believed that since Liang Ku was dead, all his belongings were now up for grabs, which would solve his problem of having failed the mission. He blamed the failure on the other young man who had accompanied him. As soon as they entered Ah Shui's house, Lai Tu acted as if the property already belonged to him. However, everything changed when he saw Liang Ku standing right in front of him. He was completely stunned, as he was sure the boy was dead. Liang Ku was furious to see those people there since he didn't remember inviting anyone. The man who had come with Lai Tu was also annoyed, thinking the old man always rushed things and ended up ruining them. Even so, Lai Tu introduced Liang Ku to the Xiao family's steward, a man named Zheng Xiang, who seemed surprised to see the protagonist still alive. To him, it was pure luck. Lai Tu, on the other hand, sneered and said, "Bad weeds never die easily," suggesting they should capture him at once. Liang Ku was furious and wanted to understand why he was being hunted like that. The steward explained that the Xiao family had hired a warrior named Zhang to defeat the water beast, but now they accused Liang Ku of having allied with the creature to kill the warrior. According to them, that had caused great losses and put the village in danger. But that story wasn't true. The protagonist knew very well that he had been tied up and thrown into the water as bait, and he found it ironic how easily Lai Tu had forgotten that. In the end, Lai Tu was a wicked man. He kept blaming Liang Ku for Zhang's death and treated him as if he were an arrogant monster. This reminded the protagonist of his past life, when he had also been lonely and called a monster by everyone around him. He had grown up labeled as a cursed orphan, a petty thief, and the target of cruel pranks at school. But he believed people called him a monster, because deep down, he truly was one, and he clearly remembered having knocked out some of his classmates' teeth. Even though he knew that using his powers could expose his identity, surrendering without a fight wasn't in his nature, so he decided to attack them all at once. If they wanted a monster, then he would be one, and he would make sure to take a piece of each of them. Lai Tu ordered everyone to tie up the boy and take him straight to Master Xiao, saying they needed someone to feed a beast, and that the orphan brat would do perfectly. Steward Zheng then gave Liang Ku a choice. If he agreed to become Master Xiao's adopted son, they would forget everything that had happened, otherwise he would lose his legs that very day. Meanwhile, outside, many people were watching the scene unfold. Everyone knew that the Xiao family had a terrible reputation in the village. Suddenly, the old village chief arrived and demanded to know who was bold enough to mess with little Ah Shui, making it clear that the boy was still alive. The steward was furious to see the old man there. This elder was an official of the Dashun Empire, and everyone was supposed to respect his authority. That immediately unsettled the steward, who was clearly unhappy about the situation. The village chief then declared that even Master Xiao himself should show him respect. Faced with that, the steward decided it was best to drop the matter for now. Everyone who was with Lai Tu withdrew, promising they would report everything to Master Xiao. After they left, the village chief approached the protagonist and said that, in certain situations, it was wiser to avoid confrontation when possible. Even so, Ah Shui would never forget what that old man had done for him that day. Once everyone was gone, Ah Shui realized that this wouldn't be the last time. The village chief had saved him today, but he knew he couldn't rely on that help forever. He understood that he needed to take control of his own life and saw the system as his chance to change everything. Soon after releasing a bit of his power, the panel notified him that his pet's evolution progress had slightly increased. So he returned to the river where he had tamed the Taihua crocodile. Since they now shared a mental bond, he could summon the creature whenever he wanted, and he decided to do just that. The crocodile appeared quickly, but it was tiny. Ah Shui didn't understand why, until the system explained that tamed beasts could shrink their bodies to conserve energy whenever they wished. He was surprised to realize how informative the system was. Then he asked his pet to take him to Z's essence. They entered the river together, and by following the little crocodile, they reached an underwater cave. The sight was breathtaking, but Ah Shui didn't yet know that spiritual plants grew there. When he touched one of them, the system confirmed that they were indeed spiritual plants, and that he could absorb the Z essence contained within them. That world had natural resources infused with mystical powers, and some plants possessed special abilities, earning the name spiritual plants. It was said that in the pond behind Old Zhao's mansion, special horns grew underwater, and he used those horns to attract warriors as honored guests. Ah Shui was curious to see how much Z essence he could extract from the plants and thought his crocodile could help. Since the creature was very lazy, he decided to name it Lazy. After gathering all the plants, he finally began the absorption process. He chewed the plants while the system detected the Z essence, confirming that it could be used to increase his fusion rate with Z's power and also to evolve aquatic beasts. After absorbing several, he decided it was better to focus on strengthening himself first. He kept absorbing until he felt his body grow stronger and stronger. With this new power, he believed he could now face his enemies on equal terms, using the strength of water to to his advantage, his battles would become even harder for them. Even so, he realized he needed to quickly deal with his financial situation. Autumn was ending, and crocodiles became sluggish during that season, which would make fishing less productive. That's when the crocodile appeared carrying a fish. Shui was thrilled and sold it for 80 coins. Local merchants were much easier to fool than the market ladies in his previous life. After taking care of the essence issue, he decided it was time to settle the score with Lai Tu. Suddenly, Lai Tu appeared, speaking to him as if they were great friends. He acted friendly and deceitful, inviting Shui onto his boat to eat something and clear up a misunderstanding. But Shui already knew everything and decided to play along. Lai Tu had been beaten badly some time ago, and during that period, several people had died in one of Xiao's experiments. Since he now needed ingredients to make pills, he thought Liang Qiu would be perfect for the job. Shui realized that Lai Tu intended to take him no matter what. That was why he was there, pretending to make peace. In truth, it was a trap. He had been promised that if he delivered the boy, Master Xiao would grant him immortality, which was everything he desired. While stirring the food beside Liang Qiu, he secretly slipped a pill into the soup. The protagonist felt that something was wrong and wasn't sure they were truly alone. When the soup was ready, Lai Tu's plan was that after the boy drank it, he could scream all he wanted. No one would hear him. But suddenly, Shui stood up and used his water control, blasting a jet of water straight into Lai Tu's face, making him choke and lose consciousness. When the man woke up, the situation had completely reversed. Now he was the one tied up, and the protagonist decided to treat him the same way. The old man was in shock. Shui took the money he was carrying and confirmed that it came from Xiao, who had paid him to deliver the boy to the mansion. Lai Tu tried to explain himself, but the protagonist found it all too familiar. They were in the same place where they had once seen the water beast, and suddenly Shui's crocodile appeared. Lai Tu was horrified when he saw the creature, while the boy introduced it cheerfully as his pet. The old man began begging for his life and promised to reveal everything. Shui asked why Zheng wanted so badly to bring him to Zhao's mansion, and why they had hired so many guards. Lai Tu explained that all those guards were used as ingredients for Zhao's immortality pills. Xiao needed them to become immortal, and every one of them ended up as part of those pills. The protagonist then realized that the old man had helped capture many innocent people. Still, Lai Tu tried to justify himself, claiming he had been forced. Just as he was about to beg for his freedom, Shui picked up a rock and ended his life. The boy knew he couldn't let him live. Lai Tu had seen a side of him that no one else should ever see. If he spared him, he would eventually be taken to the mansion and turned into a pill. Afterward, he threw the body into the river to erase all evidence. Then he dove into the water, thinking about how much easier his powers made his life. It had already been 3 days since he killed Lai Tao Zhang. To avoid suspicion, he began acting like an ordinary fisherman, leaving early and returning late to sell fish. During that time, he avoided the Lotus Lake and pretended that he had traded boats with Lai Tu, so no one would suspect anything. Even so, he knew the Xiao Mansion people wouldn't ignore Lai Tu's disappearance for long, and soon the suspicion would fall on him. The only way out was to become stronger as quickly as possible, and the best way to do that was by joining a martial arts academy. In the city of Pingyang, there were 3 academies, but the most powerful one belonged to the Yang family. It was said that the master of that academy possessed legendary strength, able to split stone and metal as if they were butter. For that reason, everyone respected him, and no one dared challenge him. Shui believed that if he could join the Yang Academy, the Zhao family wouldn't dare attack him so easily, since the disappearance of a student would bring serious trouble to the academy. The problem was that to enroll, he needed at least 5 to 8 liang of silver, but at the moment he only had 2 liang and 8 xian, so he still needed to earn more. Even so, he began to think he was worrying too much. Ever since his body evolved, he could adapt to his new powers and win most fights. His mental strength had also increased, and he figured he could catch some valuable fish. He kept fishing, and ever since awakening, he had become much more agile in the water. He competed with Lazy to keep improving himself. He developed a technique that involved compressing water under his feet to propel himself forward, though it didn't last long and consumed a lot of energy. For now, nothing could match his speed. During one of his fishing trips, he found a spiritual fish. In that world, some animals had evolved, and those living in the Great Lake were known as spiritual fish. But he didn't find just one, he found 2. It was already rare to encounter even one, so it seemed to be his lucky day. He captured one using his water control, while Lazy caught the other. When he thought he was going to make a big profit, a huge creature appeared. He had no idea what it was, but he had heard stories that at the bottom of the Yixing River there was a 6-whiskered catfish that ate humans. He figured he was unlucky to run into that very monster. The giant creature tried to attack him, but he managed to use his water control to dodge. His crocodile didn't let it go and hit the catfish with a direct attack. Seeing that opportunity, Shui knew he had to act fast. Either he would subdue the six-whiskered catfish or become dinner, so he used the blood seal of domination. The system warned him to stop, saying it would overload his mental strength, but he ignored the warning and continued the process despite the pain. After much struggle, he managed to win the mental battle. He could hardly believe it. He never imagined that catfish was so powerful. Now, seeing the catfish in its miniaturized form, he felt he had profited greatly and decided to name it Chubby. He also checked the other fish he had caught and saw that his crocodile was still holding one in its mouth. He decided to eat the smaller one first to test if it could increase his power. He kept the fish's horns as a souvenir and ended up gaining 18 Z essence points. That was a great score, but he chose not to spend it right away. What mattered most now was saving money to enter the academy. The amount of fish he had caught was more than enough. He went to Yiqing Market and noticed a lot of movement. The festival from last month had already ended, and he wondered if there was another holiday happening. He saw Chen Jiqiang showing off a rare spiritual fish, and everyone around him was amazed. The protagonist arrived and politely asked people to make way. He believed the village was blessed by the sea god because two spiritual fish had appeared on the same day. A man was confused, thinking only Chen had caught a fish, but the protagonist was referring to his own and showed it to everyone. His fish was much larger than Chen's. Still, everyone started laughing at him, thinking he had found some random river fish and was trying to sell it at a high price. A man then identified Chen's fish, saying it was a red-blood sea bass. This man was a master from Yang Academy named Hu Qi. He asked how much Chen wanted for the fish. Chen didn't know what to say and replied that he'd sell it for whatever the master thought was fair. After weighing it, Hu Qi offered 3 liang and Chen happily accepted without hesitation. The protagonist then asked the master to look at his fish as well. Hu Qi found it strange and asked if he had no shame. Everyone started getting annoyed with the protagonist, but upon taking a closer look, the master himself identified it as a bullhorn pomfret. That was when the protagonist learned the fish's name. Hu Qi offered 6 liang for it, and Shui decided to sell. People were shocked because that was a lot of money. Chen saw that and decided to leave, but Shui grew curious and asked why his fish was worth twice as much as the sea bass. Hu Qi explained that the pomfret's horns could be turned into a pill that increased spiritual energy and helped break through the limit of blood energy, exactly what he needed at the moment. After that, the protagonist calmly began counting his money until Li Bo suddenly appeared and startled him, saying he had made the village proud. The protagonist took the chance to ask how much it cost to enter Yang Academy. Li Bo explained that his father was sending him there and that the academy charged 7 liang without food or lodging, 10 liang with lodging, and 20 liang with lodging and a medicinal bath. Food was paid separately and was the most expensive in the region. The protagonist thought it over and decided he had enough money to go. He told Li Bo he would register the next day, but then he suddenly heard a strange voice and grew confused. Meanwhile, at the Xiao mansion, the butler reported that the damned Lai Tu was still missing, but they had found clues about a boy named Liang Chu. Master Xiao said he didn't want to be bothered with nonsense and ordered the butler to handle it himself, thinking the story was ridiculous. At the same time, the protagonist was preparing a stew with the spiritual fish and some spiritual herbs. This allowed him to absorb even more Za essence. He was lucky because Chubby had found another spiritual fish. After gathering the essences, he began to absorb their power. His water control improved greatly. He wondered if that power was truly natural or something created by someone. So far, he noticed that his power bore traits similar to Yinglong's and also to a giant monkey like Nozarashi. There were even traces of deities with human heads and serpent bodies, alongside a black-robed emperor, but he thought that dwelling too much on things he didn't understand wouldn't help. The next day, he set out with his friend Li Bo to reach the academy and begin training. After arriving in Pingyang village, they explored the place a bit, but some people were already plotting against them. One of the men had heard about the fish sale and how much money the protagonist had made, and decided to rob him. Li Bo and another guy were waiting for Shui along the road to the academy, knowing he would pass that way. When Shui appeared, the men tried to intimidate them. One demanded that Shui hand over all his money, threatening to bury him right there if he didn't. But the one who really wanted to bury someone was Shui himself. He wasn't about to hand over his money. One of the attackers tried to fight him but easily lost his teeth. The protagonist took down the man who had planned the ambush and defeated his accomplices as well. Li Bo was astonished by how fast his friend was. With just 9 blows, he had ended the entire fight. This confirmed what Shui already suspected. His body had grown stronger. Li Bo asked when his friend had become so powerful. Shui tried to brush it off, saying maybe he was just a genius, which was why he had beaten them so easily. After that, the two went straight to the academy's registration area. area. Although Libo found everything a bit strange, he went along. There, they were received by a young man named Xiang Chang Song, who was responsible for taking them to another instructor who would explain how the martial path worked. They would be under the care of Hu Qi, who was a direct disciple of Master Yang. Coincidentally, Hu Qi was the same man who had bought the fish from Ah Shui. As soon as he saw the boys, he recognized them. What a coincidence. Hu Qi revealed that he had advanced in level thanks to the fish he bought from Ah Shui. He then explained that he would assess their bloodlines to determine which training style best suited each of them. Since Ah Shui knew nothing about the martial path, Hu began explaining that it was divided into 4 levels. The first was the skin level, where the skin becomes as tough as cowhide, able to withstand many blows. The second was the muscle level, which grants brute strength, allowing someone to lift a person with one hand. The third was the bone level, where the body's full power is unleashed and stones can be shattered with a punch. The last was the blood level, where strength is enhanced in every aspect. He explained that the foundation of the martial path is body refinement. Even if an ordinary person trains hard, there's always a limit. To break that limit, there are 2 options: techniques and pills. Techniques are training methods, and according to Hu Qi, the Yang Academy had 3 different punching styles. With the right techniques, a practitioner could evolve. The protagonist understood it was similar to a type of cultivation, but he still had doubts about the pills. Hu Qi said that techniques strengthen the body, but the process is slow and dangerous. To accelerate and make training safer, a support is needed, and that support is pills. The fish Ah Shui had sold was exactly the kind of material needed to make those pills. And with the Z Cauldron, Ah Shui could obtain such resources more easily. The martial path is long and full of challenges, so the most important thing is to take one step at a time. With that, they began the test. But someone was watching everything, a young man named Lu Yansai, the 3rd son of Master Xiao. He had been keeping an eye on Ah Shui because he had received a mission to make sure those 2 boys left the academy. The one who had made the deal with Lu Yansai was Zhao Shuiyuan. He promised to give Yansai whatever he wanted if he could solve that problem. They had shown Zhao a picture of the protagonist. He looked about 15, the perfect age to become pill material, and since he was an orphan, it would be easy to make someone like him disappear without raising suspicion. Zhao remarked that it was hard to find a fetal pill made from someone that young. Young Yuan had always been weak since childhood, so Liang Qiu was the ideal material. Even after hearing all that, they believed that with young Dongxiang's temperament, acting wouldn't be easy. But Lu Yansai said he would handle it personally. Meanwhile, the protagonist went with Li Bo to the training field, where they found Chen Jieqiang. Li Bo grew curious and asked what he was doing there. Chen didn't understand the question, as if he didn't belong in that place. Soon the 2 started to argue, but the protagonist stepped in to calm things down. Chen Jichang was also from Yiqing City, 2 years older than the protagonist, and well known in the village for being a fisherman. He had a good relationship with the former owner of that body. He was also training in martial arts, wanting to become stronger, and had saved up money from selling fish to enter the academy. The 3 went together to class. Li Bo struggled a lot during training, just like Ah Shui and Jia Chang. After some time, Hu Qi gave everyone a short break. Li Bo was already on the verge of giving up from exhaustion. That was when Lu Yansai appeared with a few companions, including Shui Dingyi. He complained about the stench of rotten fish and said he couldn't even stand being near them. Then he tried to extort the protagonist, demanding 2 liang in exchange for peace. The protagonist analyzed the situation, uncertain if his current strength would be enough to take on the 3 of them. Lu Yansai noticed the look in the protagonist's eyes. He could tell the boy was ready to fight, so he began to provoke him, mocking him by saying his skin seemed pretty tough. Ah Shui didn't want to do anything reckless, especially since there was no water nearby. But before anything happened, Hu Qi called Yansai and his 2 allies over and ordered them to stay in the horse stance for half an hour as punishment. Yansai thought the trio had gotten off easies, but made it clear he would come back to settle the score later. After such a pointless provocation, the protagonist became certain that he needed to grow stronger as soon as possible. He said goodbye to his friends, telling them he had to return home quickly. There was danger near the lotus field, an enemy, but that was the protagonist's secret for becoming stronger, and he couldn't let anything go wrong. As the day went on, Li Bo became worried because Liang Qiu still hadn't returned. Then Yansai showed up. He thought the heavens were smiling upon him that day. He had run into Ah Shui's friends, and there were no instructors around to protect them. He promised to take them both down since the coward had too many people around him before. Meanwhile, the protagonist was at the river with his 2 pets. Both animals were almost at the hardened skin level, yet they were so terrified that they sent a message asking for help. That's why the protagonist rushed there. He wanted to understand what kind of creature was causing such destruction. When he saw saw the devastation, he assumed it had to be a giant beast. After noticing that his fusion had reached 11.7%, he discovered he could now control 70 kilograms of water. His water perception had also improved. Before, he could only sense 1 meter around him, but now he could perceive 6 meters underwater. Observing the giant creature's claws, he guessed it was a crab. A beast of that size could only be a true monster. His instructor had already explained that any beast surpassing the hardened skin level would evolve into a monster. Since both Chubby and Lazy had run away from it, he concluded the monster must be very powerful. Even so, he wondered if he could do something about it. He believed he had to grow stronger in his own way. He remembered how people had always called him a monster, how Laitu once said he was as stupid as his father, and how Yansai had mocked him, calling him a failure. Unexpected dangers had always been part of his life. To change his fate, he knew he had to take risks. He believed that important things happen by chance. Only worthless things follow a perfect plan. He refused to lose what was his. He wasn't going to hand anything over to anyone. Zhang and the bald man had tried to kill him, and that's why they were the ones who ended up dead. Now that this monster wanted to destroy his lotus field, the protagonist decided he would teach it a lesson. So he charged forward with Chubby and Lazy. At the same time, Ye Chang was being beaten by Yansai. The aggressor wanted to know where his friend was. Still, Jie Chang managed to defend himself and smashed a rock right into Yansai's face, showing he didn't owe explanations to anyone. Yansai went into a rage and started stomping on Jie Chang, saying he would die for that. He ordered his allies to guard the gate because he intended to commit a crime against both of them. Li Bo grew furious and tried to hit Yansai, but the enemy blocked easily, twisted his arm, and threw him to the ground. Then he went over to Ye Chang, looked him in the eyes, and cruelly blinded him, revealing just how evil he truly was. Meanwhile, the protagonist was fighting the giant monster. He realized it would be difficult to win because its shell was nearly invulnerable. Lazy bit one of the crab's claws, and the protagonist took the chance to use his water control. But unfortunately, his mental strength was already fading, and he couldn't maintain control for long. Despite the difficulties, Chubby helped a lot, but the giant crab continued to destroy more of Ah Shui's lotus field. After being struck again, the boy began to believe the monster had a weak point. Watching closely, he noticed that no matter how injured it got, the crab always instinctively protected its belly. That had to be the vulnerable spot. With that in mind, he ordered Lazy and Chubby to attack together. While the two distracted the creature, the protagonist prepared his move. He had thought of this attack for a long time. He concentrated as much water as possible on the tip of his wooden spear and managed to form 2 spirals. That generated a double thrust that greatly increased the power of the strike. The system immediately warned him that his mental energy was depleted, but he pushed forward anyway. He wanted to prove that he was the one in control there. He attacked the crab with all his might, determined to protect the lotus field he had cultivated with so much effort. In the end, he won but fainted once again. When he woke up, he was relieved to see that his pets were safe. His head throbbed painfully, and he knew he'd have to use that technique more carefully in the future. He was surprised to see that Chubby and Lazy had dragged the crab's body back. He thought that was excellent, since a monster of that size could yield a lot of Z essence. Then he noticed something unexpected. The creature was female and carried several eggs. He regretted not being able to tame the adult crab, as she would have been a great ally. Even so, he decided to try taming the eggs instead. He gathered them all and performed the domination ritual, sealing a magic mark on one of them. The technique worked. The crab hatched instantly and already recognized the protagonist as its master. After that, he ate a spiritual herb he had found among the rubble, which further increased his body fusion to 36.6%. His wounds healed completely. In addition to the strength gained from eating spiritual fish, he now had an extra reserve of energy from the fusion. He could even feel the flow of his own blood circulating. If Instructor Hu was right, he was already close to reaching the hardened skin level. After taming the crab through its egg, he decided the remaining eggs could serve as food for Chubby and Lazy. He named the new crab Cascudo. His plan now was to break through to the hardened skin level within a month to become an official academy student. If he succeeded, the Xiao family would stop threatening him, so he decided to return to the academy and prepare for the next morning's training. While the boy was growing stronger, his friends continued to suffer under Yansai's hands. That was when Instructor Lu Xiaohui appeared. He warned Yansai that the academy followed its own rules and that, as an instructor, he had authority over all students. Yansai tried to justify himself, saying he was only following orders from the Xiao family, something that completely shocked Xiaohui. As Xiaohui trembled, Yansai and his friends began mocking him. That was because Xiaohui was also from the Xiao household. Yansai started humiliating the instructor, saying that if the Xiao family hadn't taken in his father, neither of them would amount to anything. He even decided to blackmail Xiaohui, reminding him that his father was still under the Xiao family's care. Since Xiaohui didn't want anything bad to happen to his father, he chose to apologize. He believed that if it meant protecting his family, he would do whatever it took. Everyone laughed at the scene, even Jia Chang, who despised that kind of cowardice. He thought everything Yansai did was shameful, but Yansai didn't care and began stomping on Li Bo, taunting him and saying he should save his friend, who was now blind in one eye. Yansai was ready to finish Li Bo off right there in front of everyone. Jia Chang tried to defend him, and suddenly one of Yansai's lackeys was sent flying, passing right by him. The protagonist had arrived and was not pleased with what he saw. He exuded an intense energy and promised to break the teeth of anyone who had hurt his friends. Huchi observed everything from a distance, beside his master. He felt responsible for arriving too late. He had intended to celebrate and hadn't expected Xiao Hui to be so cold. But in truth, Xiao Hui was only trying to protect his family. The master knew he was cornered and therefore couldn't break through his own limits. A warrior without courage is like a body without breath. Huchi thought it would be better to intervene and help the protagonist and his friends. They had just entered the academy, and Yansai was already a seasoned student. That could have worsened quickly, but the master noted that the protagonist seemed to possess something special. Yansai found it amusing to hear the protagonist threaten to break everyone's teeth. He didn't believe in the boy's strength. The protagonist lunged forward, and Yansai ordered his allies to attack. Even so, the protagonist managed to take them down one by one with brutal strikes. Now it was time to face Yansai himself. The veteran released his energy, trying to show that they were on different levels. The battle was intense, but the protagonist held his ground. He landed a direct blow to Yansai's jaw, causing it to bleed heavily, and then began taunting him. Yansai once again proved cowardly, drawing a knife to injure the protagonist. He spoke harsh words, trying to intimidate the boy. But even wounded, the protagonist found Yansai pathetic. He countered with a strike so strong it cracked the ground. Yansai, now scared and bleeding, wanted distance. He whimpered, calling for Xiao Hui because he was an instructor and should do something. At that moment, the academy master appeared. He ordered everyone with Yansai to be expelled from the academy due to their behavior. Xiao Hui, on the other hand, was sent directly to the disciplinary cell, and his situation would be resolved later. The protagonist realized he was standing before the legendary Master Yang Dongxiang. He, however, feared that because of what happened, he might be expelled. While thinking this, he recalled Yansai's cruel words, calling him a worthless failure without a father. Master Yang asked if his name was Liang Qiu, to which the protagonist confirmed. Then the master asked if he was interested in becoming his direct disciple. This completely surprised the boy. Meanwhile, at the Yang mansion, the subordinates began discussing the events of the previous day, knowing that Master Yang had personally chosen his new disciple. Some girls delivered garments to the protagonist, making him feel embarrassed. 2 weeks had passed since he defeated Lu Yansai, and now his wounds were almost completely healed, along with those of Chen Jichang and Li Bo, all thanks to Master Yang's care. For the first time, he didn't feel alone. He now had a master, brothers and sisters in training, and finally felt someone was by his side. Now it was time to prepare to face the Xiao family. Huchi commented to his peers that the protagonist had been very lucky, as on the same day he entered the academy, he caught Master Yang's attention. But everyone was tired of hearing the story repeatedly, especially Xu Zixuni. Xiang Changsong believed the master had chosen the boy because he saw potential in him, while Chao Reng thought it was just envy. The protagonist appeared wearing a new outfit, looking very elegant, and thanked everyone for their gifts. One of the boys even gave him a piece of premium tungsten. Meanwhile, at the Xiao mansion, a subordinate informed his master that they had found the body of the head of scabies, but what had been inside the body was missing. Master Xiao was furious and slapped the subordinate in anger. He knew that if this were discovered, it would have serious consequences. The subordinate tried to blame Liang Chu, claiming it was he who killed Lai Tu and released that dangerous thing. Master Xiao already knew that Liang Qiu was now Master Yang Dongxiang's direct disciple and wanted the matter resolved as soon as possible. Meanwhile, the protagonist was contemplating which path he should follow. Master Yang appeared and acknowledged Liang Qiu's gratitude, courage, and dedication, asking if he wanted to be accepted as his disciple. Beside the master was Madame Yang, Xu Shi. Ah Shui accepted without hesitation. Entering Master Yang's tutelage meant being humble, diligent, respectful to superiors, and acting with honor. He could not attack his academy brothers, disrespect elders, or use his strength to oppress the weak. The protagonist agreed to all of this. After taking the ceremonial tea, he was officially accepted as the 9th direct disciple of Master Yang. From that moment on, no one could humiliate or harm him, as he now had the backing of his master. Ah Shui became the main topic among the academy students, and everyone seemed supportive. Huchi asked if he knew about the 4 barriers and 7 paths. He replied that he knew the 4 barriers, but was less familiar with the 7 paths. Huchi explained that the 7 paths were Galloping Horse, Wolf Smoke, Tiger Hunter, Sublime Elephant, Celestial Dragon, Forge, and Rainbow. At the Galloping Horse stage, a person at the peak could stop dozens of running horses without moving. At the Wolf Smoke stage, the fighter's chi flows like dense, powerful smoke, imposing posing like a pack of wolves in attack, intimidating all around. At the Tiger Hunter stage, orbital energy explodes in a wave so intense that even experienced warriors tremble like rabbits before a wild tiger. At the Sublime Elephant stage, every movement shakes the ground, capable of toppling mountains and rivers with force worthy of a great general. At the Celestial Dragon stage, the warrior surpasses the limits of the physical world, leaping thousands of meters and soaring among clouds, considered a true martial saint. Regarding the Forge and Rainbow stages, even Hu Chi didn't know many details, only that warriors at that level were close to immortality. The protagonist reflected on all he had just heard and wondered if reaching immortality would allow him to return to his own world. He also wanted to know the current stage of his master. Hu Chi explained that there were 3 academies in Pingyang village, but the others remained only because they lacked the strength to leave. Master Yang stayed because it was his homeland. His academy ranked first because he was the only cultivator in the village to reach the Tiger Hunter stage. The protagonist believed that one day, with the help of the system, he too would reach that stage. He decided to follow a balanced growth pace, as Hu Chi had recommended, to reduce the pressure from the Xiao family. He now needed to capture a sacred carp to break through the skin barrier and become a true cultivator. He returned to the river, but noticed his boat was getting too small. He would need a bigger one, as he was now catching many fish easily. Still, he couldn't catch a sacred carp that day. His technique's fusion had already reached 37%, and if he managed to capture a carp, he might finally be able to break his barrier. Suddenly, a loud noise erupted, and the river began to churn violently. An unexpected battle took place right before him. A giant bird was fighting an enormous frog. Because of the clash between the two creatures, the protagonist lost the fish he had already caught. The bird unleashed a spiritual attack so strong it hit him directly, throwing him into the river and causing him to faint. When he woke, he saw Cascudo by his side, once again saved by his pets. He tried to understand if it had been the bird's scream that knocked him down. He realized that creature was extremely powerful, and if someone had managed to capture it, that person must be even stronger. Now he sensed that the situation was becoming increasingly dangerous. He had lost his boat, the carps had escaped, and his plan to break the skin barrier would have to be postponed. Lazy approached his master, opening his mouth to show a red bass. With that fish, the protagonist might get a new chance to break the barrier. Blood and vital energy are ways to measure a warrior's physical strength, but it is not vital energy alone that makes someone strong. It is the body itself, when trained, that condenses this energy. Vital energy is not the source of strength, it is the result, and this result can reinforce the cause itself, forming an infinite cycle. The protagonist was preparing to reach his goal. He clearly remembered what Hu Chi had explained, that incense for concentration helps warriors break through their limits. To break the skin barrier and become a true warrior, it was necessary to train the circulation of vital energy in the chest area. Whenever he trained, he used fish meat to restore his vital energy. He was already on his 38th attempt, but he was still a little short of reaching the ideal point. He also recalled another teaching from Hu Chi, which said that releasing a powerful surge of vital energy helps stimulate the fascia and skin throughout the body, strengthening the outer layer. Vital energy is that warm sensation that arises in the center of the chest during training, the condensed essence of the body, the very root of life. Ashui needed to feel this warm flow emanating from his chest, spreading through his muscles and skin, transforming into heat. That was what he was aiming for. He was already on his 40th attempt. His fusion had reached 49%, but the skin barrier still hadn't broken. He believed that once he reached 50%, everything would change completely. The fish meat had run out, and the lotus no longer helped. He concluded that he would need to hunt another spiritual fish to continue his advancement. He was so focused on his training that he didn't even notice it was already morning. The parents of his friends appeared to speak with him. Ji Chang's father wanted to know if the protagonist had heard any news of his son, as he hadn't returned home in 2 days. To make matters worse, Libo's son was also missing. The protagonist remained calm and invented a story. He said he had arrived late and forgot to inform them. Since all three had done well in training, Master Yang allowed them to stay in a room inside the academy to focus entirely on cultivation. In truth, his 2 friends were still so injured they didn't have the strength to return home. The parents were relieved by this explanation and took the opportunity to mention that the village would be holding a festival in honor of the river god. They had heard rumors that the river god had leapt from the water, captured a fire-spitting bird, and even broken the sky. The protagonist was certain they were referring to the giant frog he had seen fighting that bird. After the conversation, he went to the Lotus Flower Cave to continue his training with his pet. He was now able to control water with a force of 300 kilograms, far beyond what he could manage before. He could also compress 10 liters of water until it exploded. Underwater, his control had already surpassed the skin barrier. Reflecting on everything, he concluded that the water blade technique would be even more effective with a proper weapon. He also heard from his third brother that there were legendary weapons called spiritual weapons. These weapons could regenerate, evolve, and creating one required explored using extremely rare natural treasures. It was then that his pet found something unusual under some stones, a strange warm object, a feather from the giant bird, which seemed to have unique properties. Since he was planning to visit his senior brother Lu Gang's forge to inquire about a weapon, he decided to take the feather with him and ask about it. Arriving at Pingyang County, he went to Lu Gang's forge, explained the situation, and showed what he had found. Lu Gang was surprised and said it was a scarlet fire feather, a truly valuable item. The protagonist had suspected it was important, but wanted confirmation from Lu Gang. He then learned that the feather came from a spiritual creature known as the Fire Sioux bird. When this creature faces mortal danger, it concentrates all its spiritual energy into some of its feathers, scattering them to the world to facilitate escape. Among all the feathers, one carried the greatest amount of spiritual energy. It was called the Golden Scarlet Fire Feather. With this feather, a person could essentially be reborn, leaving their old body behind while only a tail remained, similar to a lizard shedding its tail. Therefore, Lu Gang believed it would be better to forge the feather into a spiritual weapon rather than simply absorb its energy. He asked the protagonist what kind of weapon he wanted. Considering his fight against the giant crab, Ashui concluded that a long-handled weapon would be more effective in water and better suited to his techniques. He decided he wanted a spear. Spears were rare in the academy, but offered great reach, though they were difficult to control. Despite this, the protagonist had already made his decision. Suddenly, he noticed smoke outside and asked the blacksmith what was happening. The blacksmith explained that the Fahua Temple had caught fire that morning. In the midst of the blaze, something appeared that shouldn't have been there, a mountain demon. During the chaos, a pregnant woman ran desperately seeking help until she found a bald young man who resembled Frieren. She asked for assistance, but fainted shortly after. When she woke, she was being cared for by an elderly man trying to help. She had been at the Fahua Temple, and the monks wanted to understand what had happened to her. The woman's name was Hua Zhu. 3 months earlier, she had visited Pingyang to see relatives. However, she was attacked by a group of thieves in strange clothing. They bound her, covered her eyes, and took her to a bizarre place. To her, that place was like hell. People were mistreated until they lost their humanity and became monsters. She explained that everyone there was used to make pills, including gestation pills. The process was extremely painful, involving deep cuts and the use of body parts. Some hooded people participated, but they were terrified when they saw strange things happening in the victims' abdomens. Prisoners, both men and women, were forced to consume a soup made from mountain demon meat. After consuming it, their abdomens would grow as if pregnant. After 3 months, a gestation core formed. Some cores were refined to create embryo pills, said to grant immortality to those who consumed them. However, if left beyond 3 months, the cores would hatch. The bald young man's name was Ziming. One day he went to deliver lunch to Huazhu, but didn't find her in her room, thinking she was sleeping. When he entered, he saw her body completely destroyed and covered in blood, which terrified him. Blood then began to fall onto his head. Looking up, he saw a bizarre creature on the ceiling. Meanwhile, others were investigating. A police officer expressed gratitude for the help. A man sent by the Xiao mansion was also present, tasked with accompanying the bodies taken from the temple and transporting what was inside them. The guiding monk introduced the Fahua Temple, home to the monks. When they opened the door, everyone was utterly shocked. Even the monk could not believe what he saw. His master was in pieces on the floor. Most of the bodies showed bite marks, as if attacked by a giant insect or something similar. No body was intact. In the end, the man realized this confirmed what Jung had tried to explain about some of the bodies. There were blood stains that appeared to have been left by dragged bodies, so everyone decided to follow the trail to see where it led. They arrived at a place where the trail ended, and the young man was completely shocked by what he saw. They could not understand what type of creature could have caused this. In the center of the room, a pile of bodies was stacked in a way that resembled a massive egg. Suddenly, the door closed on its own. One of the men, part of the local authority, began pounding on it, demanding to know who had done it, believing they were being locked in on purpose. But what was about to happen was even worse. The large egg was about to hatch. It was one of the so-called ghost mountain eggs, typical of the Ghost Mother cult, a remnant group from the old dynasty. When a mountain ghost absorbs enough flesh and blood, it begins preparing for the second stage of its evolution. Now the conditions were ripe. The creature was about to emerge in its second stage. This type of monster achieves the power of a cultivator in the galloping horse realm, terrifying everyone. The hatching began. The second stage of the mountain ghost had begun. The creature violently emerged from the egg and captured the young monk. It was extremely fast and began attacking the others. Lu was astonished to realize the monster was indeed of the galloping galloping horse type, while he himself had not yet broken the fourth barrier. Afraid, he considered retreating. He just wanted to open the door, flee to safety, and ensure his father was all right. However, at the same time, he began to feel disgusted with his own cowardice. He then decided to help the person being grabbed by the monster and resolved to use this opportunity to test his skills against such a powerful creature. Meanwhile, Xiao Hui remembered when he was younger and used to share all his plans with his sister. He said he wanted to become as strong as Master Yang. At that moment, the memory was interrupted by the image of Zhao Shuiwan mistreating him and trying to humiliate him. After being beaten, he coughed a lot and was cared for by his own father, who worried and asked if he had gotten into a fight with the Zhao family again. His father believed he should not be arrogant. He said it was important to respect elders, protect the younger ones, and remain humble, always willing to learn. He wanted his son to become someone he could be proud of. These were the same words that Master Yang had said when he accepted Xiao Hui as his disciple. It was because of this that Xiao Hui decided to attack the mountain demon. He believed that Master Yang's disciples should eliminate evil, promote good, and act with justice. But in his attempt to strike the creature, he accidentally hit a shelf full of candles. The fire spread quickly and the place began to burn while the monster demonstrated all its power in front of Xiao Hui. The monster managed to evade all the attacks Xiao Hui tried. In the end, he lost his arm. The mountain demon grabbed the severed limb and began devouring it as if it were a hamburger. Even with the flames spreading, Xiao Hui gathered his strength and plunged his sword into the creature's body. He looked at the young man he had tried to save and apologized for not being able to protect him. But to the young man, it wasn't necessary. Xiao Hui had already proven himself a true hero. Still, he did not see himself that way. In his mind, there were others in the world far closer to being heroes than he ever was. At least that's what he thought at the time. He remembered all the bad things he had to do to stay alive. And even though he survived, those choices always left him with a feeling of guilt. At the Fahua Temple, after the fire finally subsided, several investigators examined the scene of destruction. Amid the rubble, they found a completely charred body. The body held a sword embedded in what remained of the mountain demon. It was Xiao Hui. He had lost his life but had also defeated the monster. They also found his pendant, which allowed them to identify him. Despite all the mistakes he made in life, he died as a hero. At the Xiao mansion, Xiao himself was furious. He was beating one of his subordinates for acting on his own. This rash action had caused many problems, especially if the Fahua Temple incident became public. Zheng, the subordinate, knelt and begged his master for forgiveness. He said they made that decision due to the urgency of the situation. On the day they discovered the woman had escaped, they immediately started pursuing her, but no one expected her to run into a temple. When they arrived at the Lotus Flower Temple, everything was already destroyed. The place looked like a river of blood. Zheng stated that he had no choice but to make Lu Xiaohui volunteer at the Yamen to help contain the mountain ghost. As soon as he entered, the gates were locked. After that, they set everything on fire to eliminate any evidence. However, Zhao considered the fire an irresponsible act. Burning everything completely would take 3 days and 3 nights, and if anyone investigated before that, the evidence would still be there. To make matters worse, someone else was watching everything. The Ghost Mother cult had suffered great losses due to Zheng's failure to capture the woman in time. To the Supreme Old Mother, Zheng was a sinner, and sinners deserve punishment. A man approached and crushed the heads of those who had caused the fire. He told Xiao that his contributions to the cult were valuable, and that the Supreme Old Mother would still protect him. However, he also warned him. They were all in the same boat, and could not afford to make mistakes again. In the end, Xiao promised the emissary that he would take care of the loose ends. The emissary found it very strange that Zheng had really abandoned the hidden son, but Zheng assured him that it would never happen again. After the conversation, Xiao felt relieved to have survived, but realized they were now openly threatened. Even with his plan still in motion, he knew he needed a chance to escape, as the imperial court was already moving. He believed that once the investigation into the Fahua Temple incident was completed, it would be best to flee to Guangzhou. Meanwhile, at the entrance of Yiqing village, the protagonist could not accept that Xiao Hui had ended up that way. According to Li Bo, Xiao Hui had done everything he could, showing he was a good person, but the protagonist still didn't understand why he was in that temple. He kept thinking about the mountain ghost and how difficult it was to survive in that world. At that moment, Chen Qingjiang saw the young man walking down the street and warned that there was a crowd in front of his house. Right at the village entrance, a monster was eating a centipede and seemed very eager to capture Liang Chu, as it also wished to become immortal. Nearby, a man named Xu Chengquan was mistreating his son Xue Dingyi, who was very distressed and being beaten badly. His wife and her husband were watching and arguing among themselves due to differing opinions on the situation. The protagonist arrived at that moment and saw Xue Dingyi in that state. He wanted to understand why everyone was gathered at his doorstep. The man then began flattering the protagonist because news of him becoming Master Yang's disciple had spread throughout the village. Those who didn't know were surprised and also began flattering him, which made him quite embarrassed. While continuing to mistreat his son, Xue Chengquan called the boy useless, while simultaneously endlessly praising Shui, even offering his own son to him. Shui enjoyed the situation and was not the type to hold grudges. He believed that anyone living in this world without being able to vent their anger wouldn't survive long. Shui Dingyai collapsed, knelt, apologized, and even offered to become the protagonist's servant from that moment on. But the protagonist thought that was enough and decided to let it go. Nevertheless, Shui Chengquan offered 100 taels of silver. People began calling the protagonist dear nephew, and acted as if they could gain something through flattery. Seeing that everyone was giving him attention and offering gifts, the protagonist suggested that Shui Chengquan help the village with the costs of the sacrifice to the river god. He explained that, in addition to the amount already covered by wealthy families, every physically capable man could contribute 100 copper coins. If Shui Chengquan helped cover this amount, the villagers could save some money and have a good new year. The people thanked the protagonist greatly for the suggestion. After attending to the villagers, he believed he could finally break through the skin barrier that very day. Since the heat would be much stronger than before, any mistake could fry his brain, so he needed to physically refresh himself before starting, and thus he entered the water to begin the breakthrough. At that moment, he finally managed to break through the skin barrier. He realized he had gained a much greater power than before, but the system's fusion rate had not increased. He had never imagined that breaking the skin barrier would have such a strong effect. Now he knew that if he could break through all 4 barriers, he would be able to control several tons. In the end, the protagonist's 2 abilities complemented each other, and he decided to leave the house. But as soon as he opened the door, he was surprised by Liang Guangtian, the man who always called him dear nephew. Despite being clearly self-serving, Shui got straight to the point and wanted to know what Guangtian wanted from him. Trying to disguise his intentions, Guangtian pretended to be concerned and said he had made some rice for the young man, asking if he was hungry. The protagonist knew that in the world he lived in, rice was a very precious commodity, so it was clear that this gesture was an attempt to buy him. Even so, after much insistence from Guangtian, Shui slammed the door in his face with force, knocking him down. It was at that moment that Guangtian began shouting, saying everything he thought. He claimed to be the young man's real uncle, and that Shui refused to acknowledge him simply because he was poor. But other villagers quickly defended the protagonist, reminding everyone that when Shui's father had died, Guangtian hadn't even helped carry the coffin or supported the boy, who had gone hungry. Amid the commotion, the village leader appeared and tried to give the young man a moral lesson using his cane. The truth was that everyone knew Guangtian was just trying to take advantage of the protagonist's good situation now that he was doing well. Although there were several village chiefs in Yixing, this man was the patriarch of the Chen clan, a respected figure with a strong reputation. Shui wanted to know why the patriarch was seeking him. He explained that he needed the young man to become the chief officer of the river sacrifice, a position similar to that of a high priest, responsible for leading the ceremony and representing the people. The protagonist accepted the request. The next day he would need to prepare to conduct the sacrifice, as his master had instructed. To do so, he had to study and memorize the text of the ceremony, which made him feel as though he had been reborn as a student in ancient times. The following morning, he went to school as requested, only to be surprised to find it was a primary school. He was surrounded by children much younger than him, some of whom even tried to pick fights with him. Soon, the protagonist was accused of not knowing a single character and ended up being blamed for it, since the teacher could not believe that someone his age did not know the basics. However, the protagonist began reciting everything he had memorized and spoke firmly about what he already knew. The teacher was extremely shocked to see that he had memorized so much. Even so, the protagonist commented that he found the school's method for teaching characters very problematic. The teacher was offended, as the method had been passed down for generations by the wise, and he felt that the protagonist was being presumptuous. The young man then explained that he had learned in a different way, using a method called pinyin. At that moment, Professor Si Hengyi appeared and asked the protagonist to explain more clearly. He listened carefully and found the content very interesting. The Great Shun dynasty had a special law known as the Cousin of Invention Decree. This decree allowed anyone who created something useful to receive rewards in silver, tax exemptions, or even a noble title. The protagonist believed this would be necessary, as he knew sooner or later his abilities would be discovered by everyone. Professor Si Hengyi was greatly impressed with the protagonist's knowledge and invited him to study alongside him from that moment on. But Professor Zheng was concerned about the whole situation. He believed that what Shui was doing could destabilize the current order, as he was completely changing the way people learn. Meanwhile, the protagonist's pets were playing carefreely nearby, but without realizing it, they ended up causing cracks in a building close to where they were. were, which could lead to more problems. After that, the young man decided to go to the place indicated. Lazy wanted his master to recognize what they had accomplished together and showed him the entrance they had managed to open. The protagonist was surprised by the size of the underground space. It was truly massive. He soon noticed that the light there came from a large glowing vine. He tried to bite the vine, but nothing happened. It had no taste at all. With no result, he decided to climb upward to explore other parts of the area. As he ascended, he reached a region where there was no more water, only air. The vine stretched across the entire environment. Suddenly, a blue creature appeared and tried to attack him. Shui reacted faster, since he had seen that creature before. It was a kind of aquatic centipede. Even after missing the first attack, the creature tried again, but Kiskudo was there to protect his master. Now a bit larger, it faced the centipede and defeated it with its sharp claws. The centipede had a powerful bite and a natural weapon capable of frightening even martial artists. Because of that, Shui thought that if he could tame it, he would gain a secret weapon. He tried to use the domination seal with the tip of his finger, but the system warned him of danger. The mental battle against the centipede was much harder than it had been with the crocodile. Even so, he managed to subdue the creature, though it took great effort. Despite being stronger than when he had tamed Lazy, it was still very difficult. Recognizing the centipede's power, he decided to name it Awe, but soon realized that it required a lot of resources to evolve, which made him worry. Curious about the aquatic Ganoderma Awe had been eating, Shui followed the creature to a small hole. Inside there was a skeleton, which puzzled him. It was the skeleton of Yu Jin, a former vanguard general of the Great Qian Navy. He had been defeated, succumbed to his wounds, and drifted to that forgotten place. But the protagonist thought that the scene didn't seem like simple abandonment. Perhaps it was an ancient battlefield where remnants of spiritual weapons or other treasures could still exist. Seeing a box beside Yu Jin's skeleton, he decided to take a look. He believed there might be more of the same Ganoderma that Awe had eaten. So he decided to take the general's remains out to give him a proper burial in the field of spiritual lotus roots. The young man's next goal was to evolve even further. He needed to break past the 50% mark in his cultivation progress. He began by offering pieces of Ganoderma to his pets, except for Awe, who had already eaten a whole one. The rest would be his alone. Upon tasting it, he felt as if he were in paradise. The flavor was gentle, like tofu. The Z essence within that Ganoderma was far stronger than any he had ever absorbed. Without hesitation, he decided to channel its energy. As a result, he gained a new ability, which he tested by the water's edge. His capacity to manipulate water had increased significantly. As for his pets, each of them grew between 200 and 500 points in power. The river sacrifice would take place in a week, and during that time, Shui had to study intensively with his teacher. For some reason he didn't yet understand, he felt that his new ability, the water leap, was somehow related to the upcoming sacrifice. A week later, as winter began, the time came for everyone to gather at the site of the river sacrifice. The protagonist summoned his centipede and wrapped it around his wrist. Everyone assembled as the ritual required, but a little girl began to cry loudly, saying there was a monster in the alley. A woman nearby tried to comfort her, thinking it was just childish imagination, and ignored the warning, which eventually calmed the girl. Meanwhile, the monster truly was in the alley, with a clear objective: to become immortal by capturing Liang Chu. Soon after, people began bringing animal heads as offerings for the sacrifice. The protagonist began the ritual, reading aloud the sacrificial text in honor of the river god, invoking his protection. At that moment, the mountain demon began to approach the site. Shui immediately recognized the creature, as he had seen an illustration of it in a volume from Haomu Hall, which contained detailed records about that entity. Its cracked bark-like skin left no doubt about its identity. The little girl saw the creature again and screamed for her mother. Everyone was terrified. The monster crashed to the ground with a heavy thud, and the protagonist urged everyone to evacuate immediately. In the chaos, the girl was separated from her mother, and the mountain demon nearly caught her. But Jie Chang arrived just in time to rescue her. Worried for his companion, Li Bo threw several knives at the monster, but it dodged them effortlessly. Before it could reach Jie Chang, Shui used the water leap and landed a direct punch on the creature, surprised that he had managed to hit it. Using the momentum from his water leap, he created the perfect condition to strike and save his friend. He told Jie Chang to take the girl and leave immediately. He would handle the rest. Even so, Shui still didn't understand why the creature had appeared at such a sacred moment. Suddenly, the monster vanished and tried to strike him from behind. Shui blocked the blow but was astonished by the enemy's sheer strength. The battle intensified. With the girl safe, Jie Chang and Li Bo returned to attack the monster from behind. helping Ah Shui in the fight. Taking advantage of the distraction, the protagonist launched a powerful strike at the enemy, then sent his centipede toward the mountain demon, knowing that Aoi's venom would be hard to resist. The creature would struggle to keep fighting. However, the monster noticed a group of onlookers watching from a distance in fear. Seeing them, it decided to attack. Ah Shui, realizing the danger, reacted quickly. He launched an attack to stop the creature's advance and struck it successfully. In that instant, he managed to knock down the mountain demon, slamming it into the ground with great force. The onlookers were paralyzed with fear. Many believed it was the river god himself appearing to punish them for some sin. The villagers panicked, collapsing in despair at the sight. But unlike the others, Ah Shui saw it as a blessing. To him, this was a true opportunity for Yiqing village, the best possible offering to the river god. He then took the head of the mountain demon. Now, the monster's head was placed alongside those of the sacrificed animals. Ah Shui had managed to defeat the creature thanks to the rupture of his own skin barrier, the high fusion rate he had achieved, and the centipede Aoi's venom, which had weakened the foe. Afterward, a doctor approached to treat Ah Shui's wounds. Upon examining his body, the doctor was astonished and commented that he seemed to have broken through his skin barrier. The remark left everyone around in disbelief. The doctor tried to explain while Li Bo admired his friend's strength and talent. People wanted to understand what kind of monster had attacked them. It was now clear that it had been the mountain demon, a creature known for feeding on flesh and blood. On that occasion, it had probably been drawn by the strong concentration of life energy present during the ritual, since everyone was gathered there. Still suspicious, Ah Shui began to wonder if there might be other mountain demons hiding in the Yiqing region, as he couldn't be certain this was the only one. One of the villagers looked closely at the monster's head and said it seemed familiar. Gradually, they began to believe that the body once belonged to Lai Tao Zhang. Only after hearing certain comments did the protagonist start connecting the dots. He recalled the events involving alchemy, the Xiao Mansion, the Mountain Demon, Lu Xiaohui, Lai Tu Zhang, and the Fahua Temple. That was when he finally understood. The alchemy had merely been a front. The group's true goal was to create mountain demons. He then went to the village chief and explained that this discovery was extremely important. He needed to go to Pingyang immediately and report everything to his master Yang. Determined, he vowed to see it through and hold everyone involved in creating those creatures accountable. Ah Shui traveled swiftly to the city, where he was received by the master's wife, who was willing to help him. He sat down and explained the entire situation to her in detail. Meanwhile, in the Ghost Mother cult's hideout, the members were in panic, for a powerful presence had appeared. Like a blade cutting through the sky, it was none other than Master Yang himself, demanding their surrender. Meanwhile, Ah Shui had been staying at his master's home for 2 days, as Yang's wife had asked him to remain there until he recovered. During that time, she gave him some money so he could live comfortably. His wounds were healing well, thanks to the sharp recovery pills she had provided. Master Yang suspected that the Ghost Mother cult was preparing a large-scale attack against martial artists, intending to use their bodies to refine pills. Suddenly, Hu Qi appeared and launched a surprise attack on Ah Shui, only to provoke him and test his strength. Soon after, Hu Qi invited Ah Shui to a training session and handed him a spear. The fight between them was carefully structured, almost like a well-rehearsed dance. At one point, Hu Qi managed to knock him down, leaving Ah Shui on the ground. Still, he couldn't help but notice that the young man had broken through the skin barrier and remarked that perhaps he was a fate frame. Ah Shui, not understanding what that meant, continued training with Hu Qi. The fight was exhausting, leaving the protagonist quite tired. Even so, Hu Qi kept reflecting on all the recent events, especially the investigation involving the Zhao mansion, finding everything rather strange. Still, he preferred to think he was just being overly sensitive. In recognition of Ah Shui's progress, he gave him a book, explaining that it contained the fundamentals of the bow strength method, a technique suitable for those who had broken through the skin barrier. In martial arts, there were 2 major categories: form methods and strength methods. Strength methods focused on the circulation of qi and blood, and if the protagonist studied the book diligently, he could use it to train with Hu Qi much more efficiently. Meanwhile, he also received news that the spiritual weapon he had commissioned was finally ready. In the Ghost Mother cult's hideout, located in the dungeon area, there was a mountain demon completely chained up. Around it stood several captives taken by hooded members. They would be used as food to strengthen the creature, and most had already lost hope, accepting death as their fate. A spiritual weapon, as its name suggests, contained a spirit within, and therefore had a temperament. Those with a fiery nature preferred destructive weapons, while those with a calm temperament favored armors that stabilized energy. The process of creating a spiritual weapon involved several stages. The first was softening tungsten gold to remove its impurities and increase its resistance. resilience. Next, special feathers were used to stimulate and channel an energy that the metal could absorb. The final phase came with the emergence of the bat's shadow hideout, a manifestation that existed between the real and the illusory. It was this manifestation that determined the weapon's final form. The user then had to act quickly, completing the procedure with their own blood. However, the weapon's spirit resisted. The blacksmith watched the situation nervously. To test it, he threw the spear against the wall and saw it respond perfectly. He knew then that the weapon was complete. Shui was amazed at the sight of his own spiritual weapon. As soon as he held the spear, he felt its weight and began practicing a few movements. He sensed a deep connection between himself and the weapon, as if they shared the same flesh and breath. Lu, the blacksmith, offered some training dummies in the yard so that the young man could test his weapon. Shui went there and performed several maneuvers, impressing Lu, who watched closely and found his movements magnificent. The protagonist then decided to name his spear Fubo. Shortly after, Hu Qi and Shu Zishuai arrived. Zishuai had gathered some valuable information about a place that might be the new hideout of the Ghost Mother cult. He mentioned that the area was filled with flowers and was located near the Fahua Temple. They believed they could advance their investigation there. At the end of the discussion, they decided that the best course of action would be to raid the hideout the next day. This time, they wanted to include Shui in the mission, believing it was time for him to see real blood, unaware that the protagonist was far stronger than he appeared. Meanwhile, inside the Ghost Mother cult's hideout, the butler Zheng approached the cell where the mountain demon was held. Looking at the creature, he called it son and showed a brief moment of sorrow for seeing it in such a condition. Zheng's own son had been sacrificed to fulfill one of his greatest ambitions, achieving immortality. That same winter night, atop a mountain not far from the Fahua Temple, several people were being dragged away by force. All of them would be abused and eventually turned into alchemical pills. Lu, Hu Qi, and Shui were already in position, ready to act. They had the help of a dog with a sharp sense of smell, guiding them by scent to the hideout. Zhu Zishuai wasn't physically with them, but had already begun his long-range assault, shooting an arrow that struck one of the hooded men. That shot was the signal for the others to move. Right after the shot, the enemies began to regroup. The trio ran toward the site to join Shu, who had started the fight. Watching Lu in action, Shui was impressed by his strength and speed, comparing him to a true galloping horse. During the battle, the hooded enemies mocked Shui, thinking that wielding a long spear in such a confined space would be a disadvantage. But they were wrong. The protagonist moved with incredible speed and precision, cutting down his opponents effortlessly. The group then used the dog again, this time to track the remaining hostages still trapped in the hideout. Meanwhile, one of the hooded men began to break down emotionally, overcome with guilt. He muttered that it was his fault people were dying, since he had let a woman escape, and among the captives were even children the same age as his own daughter. But before he could say more, one of his companions silenced him permanently, killing him to stop him from speaking further. Seeing the chaos unfold, Zheng ordered the release of all the mountain demons that had been imprisoned. To him, the whole situation looked like a trap set by Zhao Hongyuan. Even so, he saw it as an opportunity to use the confusion to escape through a secret passage. Meanwhile, Shui's allies had defeated the hooded men, but noticed that the protagonist had vanished. In truth, he was following the dog, which had caught an unusual scent and was leading him toward a hidden area. They discovered a secret passage, and from the animal's behavior, Shui believed there were still people alive inside. Determined to investigate, he entered. Suddenly, the system within his body activated a new mission. He had to subjugate the entire area and defeat all the mountain demons present. For each level of martial mastery he achieved, he would gain the favor of the River Lord's spirit. Suddenly, several monsters appeared, mountain phantoms still in their growth stage. Shui instantly understood he couldn't leave the place as it was. He needed to eliminate them all. With resolve, he attacked without hesitation, unaware of the full extent of his current power. One by one, he cut the creatures down. He had already slain over 30 when he struck down the last one before him. At that moment, he wondered if the mission was complete. But then, Zheng appeared. He recognized the protagonist immediately, never imagining that the once orphaned fisherman boy had come so far. Zheng believed the protagonist had arrived at the perfect moment, for he had a gift to give. He also took the chance to show Lu Chongsan that his disciple had appeared. The man beside him was none other than Lu's father, which deeply worried the protagonist. It also made Zheng realize that the young man's allies were nearby, and that this could very well be his end. Before the protagonist could act against the Xiao mansion's butler, a gigantic creature appeared, the mountain demon. The sight terrified him, for he had never seen a being so immense. The sheer size of that monster was unlike anything he had ever faced. As the winter morning dawned, the sun rose over one of the Ghost Mother cult's fortresses. Hulu and Shu rushed through the area, worried they might face enemies stronger stronger than before. The protagonist knew this was the most dangerous situation since his rebirth. The monster before him was colossal. Without a doubt, the creature was the cursed mountain phantom. It possessed the power of the galloping horse realm. Even before such a massive threat, the protagonist refused to retreat. He had finally earned his second chance at life. To him, danger was simply part of existence. It was time to fight. And so he decided to face the gigantic monster head on. Despite all the hardships he had endured, he would not let this bring him down. He began battling the mountain demon, dodging its attacks and fighting it blow for blow. Zheng was astonished at the sight, remembering that Shui had been in the martial arts academy for barely half a year. Even so, he silently wished for his son to destroy the protagonist. During the fight, the protagonist was struck hard. Zheng cheered with joy, convinced his son was unbeatable. For a moment, the battle seemed balanced, but the difference in power between them was obvious. Then, the system announced that the mission was complete. As a reward, the protagonist received the favor of the River Lord's spirit. Now he could merge his soul with that of the spirit. Even on the brink of death, he felt lucky. Without hesitation, he accepted the fusion. A strange sensation overtook him. Within his mind, a dragon-shaped voice asked if he felt no shame in disturbing the Divine Lord. The dragon declared that breaking the laws of heaven led to death, and that surrender was his only path. From that moment on, the protagonist began to transform, becoming something akin to the Divine Lord himself. Inside his mind, he waged a spiritual battle with the dragon, as if it were a struggle within his very soul. The butler Zheng seemed satisfied with what he saw. Even after so many failures, all he wanted now was a way to survive. He felt hatred toward the benefactors who appeared to help. To him, trusting only his own son was enough. He thought Zhao Hongyuan was a damn fool. That's why he ordered Shui to kill the protagonist. But Shui was different now. Just standing up from the ground, stirred up dust around him. In the cold morning light, as the sun rose, the protagonist reflected on his master's strength. He wanted to understand how powerful the forging transformation and rainbow transformation realms truly were. Yang explained that no one had ever clearly seen those realms, so their true nature was unknown. But he believed that those who reached that level became fearless. Meanwhile, the mountain demon received a direct order from Butler Zheng to attack, but with a single strike, the protagonist tore off the creature's arm. And that wasn't all. The entire body of the monster began to disintegrate under his blow. Zheng couldn't believe what he was seeing. Now he had nothing left. Meanwhile, the protagonist had collapsed and was lying defenseless on the ground. Zheng picked up a stone, determined to end the young man's life. However, the protagonist's three companions arrived just in time. They lifted him up and quickly realized that a great battle had taken place there. Zheng hid, waiting for them to leave so he could escape. But one of the hooded men appeared. He wanted to know where his wife and daughter were. His name was Lin Guiyang, and from the way he spoke, it was clear that the head butler despised him. Still, Guiyang didn't care. He only wanted to find his family. Zheng knew nothing and believed they had been devoured by some mountain ghost. That drove Guiyang into a rage, and he attacked Zheng with a knife. Even so, he continued his search, wandering through the area. The protagonist, still in terrible pain as if his body had been crushed, was in a room at his master's residence. He believed his brothers had saved him. He stood up and took his spear. As he expected, his talents had doubled, allowing him to understand martial arts more deeply. Now he could feel Fubo, his spiritual weapon, breathing. It felt as if it could refine his flesh. Even after training for only 2 months, Shui was about to break through the second barrier. He received a visit from Hu and Shu, who wanted to know what had happened in the secret chamber. He explained that he had fainted from exhaustion after defeating the last mountain ghost under Zheng Xiang's command. Shu believed him, but still found the whole situation strange, as there were rumors that Zheng Xiang had died there. The news surprised Shui. He was advised to rest. Meanwhile, renovations on his residence were almost complete. He had truly earned a home. He received that reward for saving the villagers. They even wanted to give him money, but he refused. He thought it better to share the amount with everyone so they could buy rice, which, in that world, was more expensive than meat and symbolized generosity. The gesture moved Master Yang, who sent 2 martial artists to guard the town and protect the people. The body's original owner would likely have been happy to see that. The protagonist went to the river. His boat had been destroyed last time, and if he wanted to fish again, he would need a new one. He had learned a divine lord's movement in a dream and decided to test it. With swift steps, he managed to walk over the water without sinking, maintaining perfect control. While everything was going well for the protagonist and his allies, the same could not be said for Zhang's side. He was desperate and begged the emissary for help. Their main hideout had been destroyed, and his butler was dead. 100 mountain ghosts had been lost, leaving everyone furious. The emissary, however, didn't want to hear excuses, as they were about to reap the rewards of their plans. He gave Zhang a new task: to find a boat. Zhang began to believe that Zheng Xiang, Lin Guiyang, and Lu Xiaohui had all been born only to be devoured by the Zhao mansion. To him, it was nothing but natural selection. He thought the Phantom Mother cult was rotting like an old tree that could no longer bear fruit, so he decided to flee by boat during the night with his son, leaving the rest to deal with the chaos. chaos. At the Yang Martial Arts School, things were becoming increasingly intense for the protagonist. He was already revered by many, and the situation worsened once everyone discovered that he had defeated several mountain ghosts on his own. He was certain that Shu had been the one spreading those rumors. Later, he met with Shu, Hu, and Lu, who wanted to show him something the Zhao mansion had sent, a farewell gift, valuable shop deeds that also served as an apology. Everyone began to speculate about Zhao's motives. Perhaps someone had exposed his hideout to the public. Even so, they agreed that Xiao shouldn't be given any chance to escape. A month earlier, in a very poor village, a man named Liu had gone out to fetch lunch for his wife. He hurried so she wouldn't go hungry, but when he arrived at the place, he was attacked and killed. The creature that killed him took his form, becoming identical to him, and began pretending to be the husband, even delivering the food to his wife. Now, a month had passed, and it was the last day of the deal with the emissary. When the time came, the false Liu was supposed to kill his wife and daughter. However, a voice within him began to taunt him, asking if he would hesitate. If he failed to fulfill the task, the voice promised to do it itself. The man splashed water on his face, trying to shake off the influence, but it was useless. They were one and the same. At that moment, the protagonist arrived with Shu, as they needed Liu to ferry them across. While he worked, the protagonist watched closely. He thought they should already be near the port, and knew he needed to be cautious since anyone there could be a cultist from the Phantom Mother cult. Zhu wanted to confirm whether the woman and child were really Liu's wife and daughter. Once he got the answer, he was sure of it. He found it disgusting for someone to say such words while wearing another person's skin. The creature, still pretending to be Liu, feigned confusion, but Shu wasn't in the mood for games. He began to threaten it. The false Liu grew enraged. Only one day remained, and yet they had found him out. Without hesitation, he decided to kill them both. The protagonist was surprised. The creature radiated the aura of someone from the Galloping Horse realm. Shu believed the creature wouldn't last long since they were 2 against 1. However, the false Liu wasn't alone. Suddenly, an ally emerged from beneath the water, using chains to trap the protagonist and drag him under. This new enemy was an underwater assassin who specialized in such attacks. But the protagonist fought back. He pulled his enemy with immense force. The assassin hadn't expected Shui to be so powerful. For the protagonist, it wasn't a bad situation. He wanted to test his strength after reaching a 70% fusion rate. He was even excited to fight underwater. The man with the chains wanted to know who the protagonist was, as Shui was fighting like a true aquatic master. Even so, he believed his speed gave him the upper hand and intended to finish him quickly. However, the man was struck with great force. The protagonist vanished and reappeared instantly, shocking his opponent, who couldn't believe it. He himself was from the Running Horse realm. Still, the protagonist defeated him. Fighting underwater against such a skilled foe posed no challenge for him. Meanwhile, Shu fought the other enemy aboard the boat. He pretended that the man had been devoured by a water beast. Shu believed the story and remarked that the boy had been quite lucky. Afterward, they handed the captured man over to the authorities. In the end, Shui thought those demonic cultists from the Phantom Mother cult didn't seem that strong. Shu explained that they belonged to a weakened generation. Martial artists of the tiger hunting realm could live up to 120 years, and those of the Zhenjiang realm even longer. However, it had already been 70 years since the fall of the Great Qian dynasty. The older generation still lived and remained dangerous, but the middle generation had long since died out, and the veterans rarely appeared. That was why these cultists didn't represent the cult's true power. The real terror lay in the Phantom Mother cult's elite. After 40 years of activity, they had developed followers and refined techniques such as the blood sacrifice technique. Now the cult suffered from a lack of fresh blood and desperately needed reinforcements. The wolf smoke pill was the emissary's greatest hope to change that. Suddenly, something was hurled toward the emissary, but he easily shattered it. He wanted to know who had attacked him. That was when Hu Qi and Lu Gang appeared. Without wasting time talking, Lu Gang launched an attack. The emissary blocked it, but the force of the blow was so strong that it cracked the wall. The protagonist concluded that the man was probably in the wolf's middle smoke realm, a level higher than Lu Gang's. The emissary realized that this was the best Lu Gang could do. Even after taking a direct punch, he looked completely unharmed. Seeing that, he swore this would be the end of both of them. The fight grew intense, and all Lu Gang could do now was defend himself from the heavy blows. Hu Qi appeared behind with his bow and fired an arrow. The emissary became furious, thinking it was an insult for someone to try to hurt him with something so weak. However, one of the arrows released a gas that hit the emissary's eyes directly, leaving him disoriented. Taking advantage of the opportunity, Lu Gang tried to strike him again, but the emissary still had one last trick. He grabbed a pill and swore he would spare neither of them. Before he could use it, Hu Qi fired another arrow and destroyed the pill. They demanded that the emissary surrender immediately. However, they soon realized they had been deceived. That pill was fake. The real one was already in his mouth. Both were frustrated, not understanding when he had done it, since they hadn't seen a thing. Then the emissary's body began to change. His skin turned completely black, giving him the appearance of a true demon. From that moment on, they knew the battle would become even harder. Meanwhile, the young protagonist was traveling with Xiao, approaching Xiao's residence. But Xiao sensed that his companions were in trouble. It was typical of demon cults. They hated looking human. Each member lived only to serve the ghost mother of the cult. The emissary, chosen for his blind devotion, was named Huang Zijun. Now, Zijun was fiercely fighting Lu Gang, while Hu Qi grew frustrated at being unable to find a clear shot amidst the chaos. Suddenly, Xiao arrived with Shui and decided to take Hu Qi's place in the battle. Lu Gang was already exhausted and needed to find a way out of that situation. Xiao then fired an arrow at Zijun, the emissary, but Lu Gang found it strange. That arrow was far weaker than Xiao's usual shots. It shattered easily upon touching the enemy's skin. That's when Lu understood everything. His companion was merely creating a distraction. As soon as an opening appeared, Xiao released another arrow, this time with much greater force. Meanwhile, Zijun recalled his master's words. They were nothing but remnants of a forgotten age, and the current world had no place for them anymore. Everything that once belonged to them was now in the hands of others. That was why Zijun wanted everyone to pay for it. Still, he was struck hard by Xiao's second arrow. He couldn't believe what had just happened. The protagonist had fully understood the strategy. The first arrow was weak on purpose, while the second carried the true power of someone from the galloping horse realm. In the end, Zijun admitted he still had much to learn. The protagonist bound him with special chains made specifically to restrain martial artists from the wolf smoke realm. Xiao warned Shui not to be frightened by what he was about to see. He explained that demonic cultists often took on forms that were neither human nor ghost. But Zijun replied that Xiao said such things only because he had never lived in lightless caves or walked over piles of corpses. All Zijun wanted was to live with freedom and dignity. That, to him, justified everything he had done. But Xiao disagreed. He believed one should never look for noble excuses for cruel actions. After all, Zijun had destroyed countless families. There was no way to make his deeds less selfish. Xiao only refrained from breaking all the man's bones right then, because they still needed vital information from him. Xiao's anger came from something deeply personal. He was an orphan because of the Ghost Mother cult, which had destroyed his village. The protagonist watched everything and felt something new, a sense of fulfillment he had never experienced before. In the end, they managed to capture the emissary. Days later, even after handing Zijun over to the authorities and receiving a handsome reward, the protagonist still felt uneasy. He thought the master's wife was an exceptionally generous woman. During that time, he joined his senior brothers in hunting down other mountain ghosts and realized that his strength had stabilized. He wanted to grow stronger still. Then Xiao informed him that the master had returned and wanted to discuss rewards based on each disciple's performance. The protagonist was surprised. For him, the money he had already received was more than enough. Meanwhile, the captured emissary Zijun swore vengeance against Xiao Hongyuan. The young men felt uncomfortable eating near such criminals, but they knew everything had been arranged by the master's wife, so they didn't question it. At that moment, Shui discovered that the master's wife's surname was Shu, a very important name in Huangzhou. The Shu family had once produced a great secretary of ministers during the Great Ancestors era. It had been the old marshal who arranged the marriage between the master and his wife. The master's wife's father was Lord Shu Rongguang, the third minister of the Imperial Enterprises court. Then Master Yang announced that the two criminals would be taken for interrogation later that day. Zijun declared that he wouldn't cooperate and that they could kill him if they wished. Sooner or later, members of his cult would come for them all. To Master Yang, those words were nonsense. He said the cult made serious mistakes in its priorities and didn't even understand the doctrines it preached. The only reason Zijun was still alive was because he remained useful. Otherwise, he would have been eliminated long ago. With that settled, Master Yang turned to the matter of his disciples' rewards. He handed a special gift to the protagonist, explaining that it had been sent by the young man's senior brother, and that he had merely retrieved it from the post office. The gift had been obtained by a white-haired captain who had defeated several warriors from the Wolf Smoke realm. This captain was known for his generosity, and everyone envied the protagonist's good fortune. Because of that, some began to suspect that the master played favorites. But he said that, once he returned, he would bring drinks for everyone. In the end, he only hoped the protagonist would like his gift. The gift Shui received was a spiritual tool. Such artifacts are unique. They have the ability to grow alongside their owner, making them completely different from ordinary weapons. For a typical martial artist, owning a spiritual tool was a source of immense joy. The materials to forge them were rare, and few people still practiced that craft. Now, the protagonist possessed two of them. He named the new one Qinglang. With that, the protagonist's weakness in close combat was resolved. He would no longer be limited by his surroundings in battle. In the end, he realized he had missed many classes classes due to the mountain ghost incident, so he decided it was time to resume training. On the way, he encountered Professor Si Hengyi and felt embarrassed, but the professor said it was fine and took him along. They went to see the headmaster, as they had made improvements to the pinyin method. The headmaster of Zhaoji Academy was surprised by the method Shui had developed. However, the old man wasn't interested in formalities. He wanted to show the improvements he and Hengyi had made together. Shui immediately noticed a great optimization in the method. He thought it was amazing and became certain that the old man was no ordinary person. The headmaster was also very grateful to the young man. Hengyi explained that he had already submitted the architecture developed by Shui to the supervising professor, and that, with his recommendation, the young man's chances of being ennobled would greatly increase. Shui was deeply grateful, knowing that connections made everything easier. However, he still didn't know who the great professor was. Only then did Hengyi realize he had forgotten to mention the name. At the top of the imperial capital's hierarchy was the emperor. Below him were the 3 halls and the 2 pavilions, forming the group known as the 5 great scholars. One of those scholars was the teacher of young academics, the renowned Li Haobai, known as one of the 5 greats. In one of his public posters, Li Haobai had openly praised the pinyin method, drawing attention to its potential. At that time, the emperor was showing interest in dissolving the tribunal, believing that the great scholars no longer made meaningful contributions. During a meeting, one scholar mentioned a new enlightened method that surpassed the old Chiezi method. This new method was pinyin, and Li Haobai himself, representing the pavilion of literary depth, was present to defend it. In the Hall of Diligent Governance, a man named Nian Xiao opposed the proposal, arguing that replacing the ancestral laws and traditions with something so new and unproven was a grave mistake. On the other hand, Zhang Juyi claimed that Xiao Qi failed to understand the fundamental principles that upheld the state. Amid the discussion, Su Yigang also voiced his opinion, saying that the pinyin method was indeed superior to the old Chiezi method. The debate went on without reaching an agreement until Li Haobai suggested that everyone test the method for themselves. He explained that pinyin had been created by Liang Ku, a fisherman from the mountains and a student of one of his disciples. Despite his humble origins, the young man was very intelligent, and Haobai believed he deserved official recognition, even suggesting a title of nobility. The emperor found Liang Ku intriguing and decided to test the method personally, assigning the 6th prince to oversee the experiment. Thus, the tribunal was temporarily adjourned. Meanwhile, at the Yang residence, the master was reading a letter stating that it was necessary to update the records to be sent to the imperial capital. A new mandatory item had been added, the destiny chart, required for registering martial artists. For Master Yang, this was a great opportunity for the young Shui. According to the principles of the destiny chart, a person's future was not fixed. It was like a path to be followed. With the wind, one could become a tiger. With the rain, one could become a dragon. The better the destiny chart, the greater the chance of achieving great success in the martial arts. Advanced charts usually had 2 seals, a main seal and a secondary one. One example was the Martial Saint Zhang Longxiang, who possessed the main seal of the Divine Mountain of the Great Pillar and the secondary seal of the Fierce One, who snatches food, a symbol of strength. To reach that level, he endured tremendous trials. 13 years after his journey began, he was found in the northern wastes, where he faced 3 experts, killing 2 and leaving the 3rd gravely injured. Another example was the Martial Saint Yuanji, who possessed the chart of the desolate stone mountain. He attained enlightenment in the desert and regained his youth. However, because he did not belong to Great Shui and refused to surrender, he was ultimately slain by Zhang Longxiang. In the end, destiny charts were not immutable. They changed according to one's choices and the people surrounding them. Destiny was a path in constant transformation. Despite all that, the protagonist wanted to understand how a destiny chart was actually evaluated. The key to this assessment lay in the ashes of the incense. The longer the incense burned steadily and brightly, the better the result. The master had already prepared a standard 5-year destiny incense, especially for the protagonist as a New Year's gift. However, it still lacked one essential ingredient, the blood essence of a 100-year-old treasurefish. This requirement surprised the protagonist. Treasurefish were rare creatures born from the energies of heaven and earth. They carried natural fortune concentrated in their blood. For that reason, the blood essence of such a fish could influence one's destiny. In the end, the protagonist realized that when it came to finding this kind of fish, he was an expert. With that thought, he decided to buy another boat. An old man showed him some models that seemed to be in good condition, though a few parts had been refurbished. During the visit, a man named Lin Di appeared and was pleased to see the protagonist in his shop. The young man's presence drew attention, and soon rumors began spreading among passers-by. Lin Di quickly called for his youngest son to greet the guest and seized the opportunity to make an offer. He proposed a 20% share of the guild's profits and promised the best boat available if the protagonist agreed to become the group's patron. However, the protagonist refused without hesitation, leaving Lin Di astonished. The protagonist already understood how that world worked. He knew that the strong always devoured the weak and wanted no part in such schemes. Although merely a fisherman, he also valued a good reputation. Still, he didn't wish to cause trouble with other fishermen. He knew he couldn't take care of everyone, and preferred not to assume that kind of responsibility. Even after being turned down, Di had another offer. He said there were rumors of a monster on the borders of Shuibu County, and wanted to hire the protagonist to deal with the threat. As payment, he could keep a fine boat. Hearing this, the protagonist set out toward the Great Zhonghui Marsh, a place known for containing many treasures and countless hidden dangers. The waters of the region were divided into two zones, the shallow water zone and the deep water zone. The first was accessible to ordinary people but held few resources, while the second was rich in treasures yet extremely perilous. Usually demons wishing to enter the shallow waters had to request permission from the river god. If they failed to do so, they could be punished by the Great Shun. The lightest punishment was expulsion, while the heaviest was death. The monster mentioned by Di was said to be right on the border between the deep and shallow waters. Sometimes, such creatures lost their way and crossed the boundary. This time, the protagonist did not bring away with him, as he had been sent on another mission. Even so, he thought the risk was worth it. Feeling stronger than before, he was confident enough to explore deeper and seek greater opportunities. With luck, he might even find a 100-year-old treasure fish in the deep waters. He searched for hours without finding his target. After a long time, it was Fatty, one of the protagonist's pets, who finally found something. He began chasing whatever he had scented, leading the protagonist to a 7-star eel, a rare creature. Though it looked ordinary, the protagonist knew a monster's strength couldn't be judged by appearance. And this one was different. Powerful demons usually avoided the shallow waters, not only out of fear of the Great Shun, but also because the rewards didn't justify the risk. Naturally born treasure fish were sometimes strong, but the protagonist believed that this eel wasn't yet powerful enough for him. Using his control over water, he tried to attack the creature. However, a second one suddenly appeared. It lunged at him, but he narrowly dodged the strike, and then saw the newcomer devour the 7-star eel whole. Perhaps this was the true monster Di had mentioned. Since the beast had stolen his prey, the protagonist decided to take its life as payment. Losing the treasure fish was unfortunate, but this new enemy was an even greater opportunity. He felt that by consuming its flesh, he might break through the next barrier, so he resolved to slay it and feast on it. The armored turtle tossed him a spear, and he wasted no time. He hurled it at the massive creature, landing a clean hit. The centipede then unleashed its venom upon the enemy. All his pets joined the fight, working together to bring down the monster. The protagonist finished the creature with a precise cut, as if slicing meat for a meal. Luckily, none of his beasts were injured. He shared the meat with them and roasted the rest over a fire. The creature was so large that plenty remained even after the feast. After the meal, the protagonist felt his energy changing. He was certain he would finally achieve the breakthrough he had long sought. In the end, he completed the fusion. Without realizing it, he had fulfilled all the conditions for an upgrade and succeeded by accident. Soon after, he felt something strange inside his body and thought, for a moment, that he had failed. However, the advancement had been successful. He was now completely fused with the water monkey Z-Ling, and his strength had become immense. Even so, his body felt as if it might shatter from within. Fortunately, the harvest from this adventure had been well worth it. The reinforcement from dragon essence and tiger bones acted as a full-body fortification. His power had tripled, and to test it, he threw a punch into the air. Despite this growth, the process of reaching the bone stage had deeply affected his 5 internal organs. Luckily, Master Yang had taught him to cultivate Xing Qi Ming long ago. Now that he had finally reached the bone stage, everything felt extraordinary. Without this breakthrough, he might have suffered internal rupture from overexertion. Immediately afterward, the system sent a notification. His crocodile wished to evolve into a horned wood crocodile, and his catfish wanted to transform into a tiger-headed catfish. Without hesitation, the protagonist evolved them both at once. The crocodile underwent a complete transformation, becoming almost like a dragon. The protagonist knew that his pets were his greatest asset. He hadn't had a choice in the past, but now he was determined to take them wherever he went. Fatty, who is no longer fat, had developed a new ability, emitting high-frequency sound waves like a piercing shriek. He was responsible for propelling the boat. At that point, the protagonist no longer needed to do anything. His pets ruled everything within the water. He didn't even need to fish anymore. They did all the work for him. 2 men were waiting for him. Suddenly, Ashui arrived, carrying the head of the giant monster. He handed it over and asked the two to inform Di that the creature had been slain. As agreed, he would keep the boat as his reward. Meanwhile, one of the men noticed something curious, a treasure fish among the monster's remains. That immediately caught Ashui's attention. On closer inspection, he confirmed it was indeed a rare fish, and even estimated its value by weight. He tried to buy it right away, but since he had saved everyone, the man decided to give it to him as a gift. Looking at the man, Shui realized he was the same one from his memories. In the memories of the body's former owner, Chen was the one who had given him food when he was starving. Seeing that he hadn't changed moved Shui deeply. Now, all that remained was to wait for the new year to finally assess his destiny chart. When he met with Master Yang, he was told that the time had come. The chart would be evaluated to determine his fate. To do so, they would use the blood sacrifice method, said to have the power to reveal a person's true destiny. Then, the ritual began. After lighting the incense, he had to keep his hands steady over the bowl. He couldn't tremble. The blood mark formed a perfect circle. Shui actually had two seals, one main and one secondary. Ordinary people usually had empty seals, so having two indicated a promising future. The secondary seal on the left showed a river. That confused everyone as they expected a symbol of a fierce god. The main seal on the right was a monkey, which also surprised them. Shu believed everything was reversed. Everyone wanted to understand its true meaning. The master explained that the seal was very complex. The secondary seal represented the destiny of Long Jiao, who walks the river. This symbol had two interpretations. According to legend, a serpent becomes a Jiao after 500 years, and a Jiao that travels the river for 1,000 years transforms into a dragon. The first interpretation suggested that someone's younger brother would endure many dangers before becoming a true prodigy. The second meant that another person was also transforming into a dragon, and the two destinies would eventually clash. One would reach greatness, but only by stepping over the other's body. Shui told them not to worry. To him, it didn't matter who walked the river. What mattered was that he wouldn't be mediocre. The master believed that this young man who once fought 7 men alone might indeed be turning into a rising dragon. Even if his destiny was extraordinary, he must not let ambition consume him. The master said he would send the report of this destiny to the authorities for official registration and await a possible reward. Shui felt grateful. He trusted his own seal, for he knew it well. It wasn't merely a fierce monkey, it was the ancient ferocious god Wushiki. With Zeding, no one could take away what was his. In the Hall of Diligent Governance, the officials discussed Long Jiao's fate as he followed the river's path. They were curious about who would become the true dragon in the end. Perhaps Shui truly lived up to their expectations. As training grew too intense, Master Yang ordered everyone to rest. That year, he decided to hold an evaluation for his two disciples, so they wouldn't become complacent. Chang Song and Liang Qiu, the newcomers, still had much room to grow, and he placed high hopes on them. Master Yang wanted Shui to pass through the 3 cultivation stages by the following year. However, Liang Qiu clarified that the master was mistaken. He had already broken through the flesh stage and demonstrated his energy. Everyone was shocked, as he had achieved it in just 3 months of training. Shui also felt confident. He believed he could become a true martial artist within a year. The master realized he could no longer be lenient. He explained that the great emperor Huang Wu had created the invincible 10,000 victories technique. Over time, that technique had been divided into various methods. Later, the Taoist master Ge Jiantai reconstructed it and merged it with the Taoist techniques of Baodan Gong, thus forming a new style. The master decided to teach this technique to Shui. Meanwhile, a group was traveling aboard a caravel. They were searching for Commander Shu, but he had gone fishing. A girl named He Yung was confused, especially since it had begun to snow. Elsewhere, a son was leaving his parents to pursue his path of cultivation. Ko Zhuang arrived at the city of Pingyang with a man named Lan Tai, who believed Ko could do whatever he wished in that place thanks to his strength. With Ko Zhuang and Lan Tai were also an old man and a young girl. They could not forget their purpose for coming there, to challenge the Yang family's martial arts hall. They had opened their own dojo, the Pang Clan's Steel Martial Hall, and hoped that once they earned enough money, they could cure the old man's illness, as he suffered from a persistent cough. Ko was responsible for carrying all the heavy items during the move. In the end, they managed to settle down, but not everyone lived to see that success. They had lost everything in a fire. Some of their companions had died in the war against the monsters. The master's wife had also been killed by those creatures. The young girl with them seemed distracted, interested only in the sweets from the Longyun pavilion. At that moment, 3 men appeared, and they did not seem friendly. They said they had just arrived in Pingyang and didn't know much about the place yet. They claimed everyone in the city was obliged to contribute grain to help the province of Huayin, which had suffered a disaster caused by human action. But Ko's group was actually from Huayin, and they had been rejected upon arriving there. Without thinking, the girl revealed that fact. One of the men slapped her. Ko was furious, but the aggressors realized they had no martial master with them, meaning they likely had no money either. Even so, the men threatened to take everything they could find. They said that if the group didn't comply, they'd be defying a direct order. Since they had nothing left, the men began mistreating the old man. Kao's anger burned at the cruelty of those corrupt officials, but he couldn't fight back. In the end, the men found the small amount of money they had and left. Ko swore that one day he would kill them, but the old man advised advised him to save his strength for the duel against the Yang family hall. That would be their true revenge. After that, the corrupt officials decided to move on to the small city of Yiqing, thinking they wouldn't find anyone important there. Meanwhile, someone of great importance was arriving in Pingyang, walking straight toward the Yang family's hall. At the same time, Shui's bone stage was fully consolidated. He was already thinking of breaking through the next barrier. Master Yang personally received the important visitor. By decree of heaven, the emperor had ordered that the county of Kaozhou be abolished. Pingyang was to become a new county, and Yiqing would officially be elevated to city status. Yang was appointed head of the office of the river god and also the department of demon hunting. Everyone involved was rewarded with important positions and great wealth. Shui became rich just from this payment. Moreover, for presenting the pinyin method, he was imperially gifted with a blood dragon steed. Shui was overjoyed to receive such a noble beast. The imperial envoy handed the gift to Master Yang, who organized a special banquet in the emissary's honor, gathering his disciples as well. The emissary was very interested in Shui. He said His Majesty often spoke highly of the pinyin method, praising it constantly, proof that the young man was truly remarkable. In the future, he would surely receive even greater rewards. With all that, Pingyang became a true piece of cake that everyone wanted a share of, and more than ever, the city turned into a grand stage for Shui to shine. However, not everything was peaceful. The river god had been discovered, and poor Fatty, who had been involved with him, was now in danger. After that meeting, Shui noticed many unfamiliar faces in the streets. They looked like refugees. A boy approached him, saying his grandfather wanted to meet Shui. They needed to go to the meeting hall. The village chief was looking for him, and Inspector Bian was there too. He had come to extort the villagers, but no one could afford what he demanded. After shouting threats and intimidating the village leader, Shui appeared. He suggested a better solution. Since Inspector Bian claimed he needed grain to feed the refugees, Shui proposed setting up a porridge shed so the villagers themselves could care for them. The idea was well received, and everyone felt relieved by his arrival. Bian grew irritated at being contradicted. The local leader explained that Shui was the pride of their village, a disciple of Master Yang, and had the right to give his opinion. That surprised the inspector. He realized he had chosen the wrong place to try his extortion and could easily get himself into serious trouble. Shui also reminded him that Bian kept referring to Kaozhou as if it were still a county, but that classification had already been abolished. That single remark exposed how outdated the inspector was, making his presence even more suspicious. As Bian struggled to find a way out of the situation, a man on horseback arrived. The newcomer, clad in full armor, demanded to know where Yang Ku was. He had come from the city of Yiqing. Inspector Bian was stunned when he recognized the uniform. The rider was one of the Cloud Eagle riders from the Six Fan School, a respected organization. Shui immediately introduced himself to the horseman. Upon hearing his name, Bian's mind began to race. He remembered that the Six Fan School was investigating individuals connected to the Ghost Mother cult. It was possible that Shui was somehow involved. To Bian, this might just be the perfect chance, exactly what he needed to turn the tables.